benefited from the advice and support from the improvement panel, and I'd like to thank all those members of that team, and we continue to seek their help and advice when needed. But we're now in a much stronger position to focus on the Council's city priorities and to realise our ambitions. As you know, members, that panel report came to Council and it's here before us today. We will be writing to DLUC again, and we're expecting a reply any day now from our previous letter. In fact, the Minister rang me personally last Saturday. That's Lee Rowley, so I thank him for his time and consideration on the phone. We chatted through where we are, where we're going, and overall I think it's a positive move forward in the progress we've made. But Matt, I'll hand over to you then if you've got anything to add to the report that you or we might not already know about.
I think, Leader, I'm happy to take any comments or questions on the report.
Okay, lovely. So I'm sure we'll have comments and questions. In fact, I know we don't just throw this together. Seems that way sometimes, but we do chat about things before. So I think John Howard has the first question. Thanks.
Thank you, Leader. Good morning. What has been done to tackle the financial challenges? Because the progress has been really impressive and at a rapid pace as well. So just wanted to know a bit more about what's been done to get so far so quick.
Yeah, I'm happy for Celia to comment as well, but I mean, overall for me it's been a collective effort. I think there's been really strong political leadership. The leader has stepped up and brought the groups together. The role of FSWG is touted well in the report. I think that's been a really good collective effort across all parties. But it's about culture, ownership, getting a grip of the financial challenges, budget CLT we've had every week, getting a grip and understanding where the concerns, where the risks are. But I think overall it's a sense of just a level of direction, understanding our budgets, what the opportunities are of spending and delivering service in a different manner, and I've really encouraged teams to start thinking through that. So whilst we did have huge financial challenges, over £20 million last year, to be able to set a balanced budget is remarkable. And the level of transformation and change expressed by the chair has been fantastic. So I think the panel has been really supportive of the council. I think DLUC have been very supportive, and we were in discussion on Friday around that, and I think that progress will continue.
Great. I'll move on to question 2 from Nigel Simons, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, it's clear to me the improvement panel has been hugely beneficial to the council. How long will the council have the improvement panel for, please?
Thank you, Councillor Simons. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, when we originally set on this journey, they always talked about 2 years for the improvement panel. They described it to the chair and others that it'd be roughly 2 days a week. In reality, they've been doing about 2 days a month. They see us as a very low-risk authority now, in terms of because of the progress being made. I think over the next 6 months, we will be having discussions with the improvement panel and DLUC. DLUC have already intimated that they probably want to see some reduction in terms of the exposure and focus, which is a good thing. Cecilia and I, in the next probably 4 to 6 weeks, have got a focus session to look at the best practice and shared learning that we can help other councils and the sector overall on that journey. So I think it will slacken off, but I think the focus will change more into the transformation agenda of redesigning some of our key services rather than just the cash limits, the budget limits, etc., and accountability. It's that transformation drive they want to see more of.
And Ishi, please.
Hi, Matt. What are the remaining key challenges and opportunities you see over the next 12 months?
It's about that cross-council working in particular. Team working is really key now. And I think it's trying to understand, as every council is doing across the country, what's the future role for local government over the next few years, and how do we keep redesigning and rethinking what services we should, provide in the future, because the demands are constantly changing. And we're not unique in that, but that's our challenge. We've got to a financial base now, which is miles stronger. We've got a balanced budget for the first time for a few years. That's really important.
And finally on this item, Nicole Moyo, please.
Thank you, Leader. I believe my question is already answered. I had a question in relation to improvement and the trajectory going forward, and carefully and wonderfully answered that question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. So do we have any more questions? No, I didn't see any more hands throwing up. So we'll move to the recommendations, which you'll find on page 13 this morning. And they're as tabled. Recommendation 1 considers the second report. The Independent Improvement and Assurance Panel agrees with the action taken as a result and requests that Growth, Resources and Community Scrutiny reviews the report, Cabinet's response to it, and the progress being made within the delivery of the improvement plan. Are we all agreed on that? Agreed. Lovely. Thanks. I think we'll move to the joint working agreements at item 6 between Peterborough City Council and Cambridgeshire County Council. This is our annual review, exit protocol and procurement protocol. And I'm not sure who's introducing this item, is it? Well, in fact, it's got your name on here, but I'm trying to work out whether it was me or somebody else or whether it was Andy, but I think it was me. But I don't have, I can give a little bit of background in terms of the purpose of the report is to consider the outcomes of the annual review for those that know about the joint working agreements and arrangements between ourselves and Cambridgeshire County Council and seek approval of the recommended modifications to the agreement subject to that review. Cabinet therefore is asked to note the joint working agreement, annual review of 22 and approve the inclusion of the agreed exit protocol and procurement protocol into the joint working agreement. So Rochelle, do you have anything to add to that, or would you like to go straight to questions?
Thank you, Leader. Just a few points to add. So the Shared Services Governance Group have met and agreed a number of changes. The group consists of CCC officers and PCC officers. Section 4.4 outlines the recommended changes, which most significantly includes the procurement protocol, governing principles of joint procurement processes, and secondly, the exit protocol, governing termination of the joint working agreement, part or team or individual. Section 2 of the exit protocol covers planning arrangements, and Section 3 covers the transfer of services. In December, 16th of December, the joint working agreement went to the equivalent committee at Cambridgeshire County Council, and you will see at Appendix 1, 2 and 3 an overview of the document, the exit protocol and the procurement protocol. Happy to take questions.
That sounded thrilling. I'm sure there are people chomping at the bit to ask a question. And I think I've got Andy first.
Thank you, Leader. Rochelle, thank you for the report. Obviously, procurement's coming into my portfolio, so I'm very interested in how that's going to develop. But the two protocols, clearly they're coming through our process as we understand them. And you were saying that they've been to a Cambridgeshire committee, but can you tell me if they've been approved through their governance process? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. They have been approved, and there's also a delegation for the Chief Executive to make final amendments to document if any arise.
And Linnaeus, please.
Thank you, Leader. I have an interest in the law, so my next one to ask you about the exit protocol, please, which includes detailed personnel arrangements at sections 3.6 to 3.8. Given the implications of these arrangements, have these been considered and agreed by Human Resources, HR, and employment specialists, i.e. an employment lawyer?
Thank you, Councillor Ayres. I can say yes, and I'm going to defer to Mandy with more details.
Hello, good morning. Yes, they have. We engaged with an external lawyer who's a specialist in Section 113 agreements. That's where we have arrangements between two authorities and an employment lawyer as well. So we shared our initial draft with them. They reviewed it and then concurred that it was strong in employment law, strong from the Section 113s, and actually had a good pragmatic approach to it as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I should, of course, for the benefit of the record, say that Mandy Pullen is the Assistant HR Director. Otherwise, everybody will be wondering who you are. But I'd forgotten you were sat there. I shouldn't have missed you in pink, really, should I? So, Marco, please.
Thank you, Leader. The exit protocol sets out high-level considerations for various termination scenarios. How will the Council manage any such termination in order to minimise any impact on service and the staff that work there?
Ooh, got a choice now of who's doing it then. Mandy.
Hello, yes. Thank you, Councillor Sresti. So what we've done in the exit protocol is we've set out a work stream approach, noting that there's going to be a number of things that cut across changes when we look at doing exit arrangements. So we've got a work stream approach. It's project managed, and it has a senior responsible officer attached to it as well when we enter into coming away from shared arrangements. Both HR teams in both authorities have worked closely for the last 6 years, and there's no reason for that not to continue. We'll do that as well. So we will ensure that we will minimise any disruption, we will minimise any impact to staff personnel involved, and of course to make sure that the services continue to run as much as they do now as we are joint, but so minimising the disruption.
Thank you very much. I don't have any more hands or notes of any questions. So just a footnote from me, of course, whilst there are changes afoot in shared services arrangements with the County Council, which has been a very successful piece of work over the number of years that we've been in partnership with them, I think we would all agree as a Cabinet and hopefully to the wider public that it's time to focus on our own services, and we are slowly moving away from those shared or joint arrangements, not entirely, because there will be some things that it's sensible to keep together, but there are other things, given our much well publicised challenges, both in financial terms and governance, that we focus on our own affairs, and that means having our own teams in place that are just focused on our services and the residents of Peterborough. So if I move to the recommendations, which you'll find on page 61, and there are three of them, 1, 2, 3, quite short. I won't read them out on this occasion. They are all well publicised, well documented, and again, I'd remind you can find them online. Are we all agreed with those, Cabinet? Thank you very much. There we go. Moving to what is set to be a very exciting, he's nearly out of his chair already, project, because I like to move us along this morning. Peterborough Youth Zone, which has already drawn some speculation in the press and from elsewhere, but hopefully those members that have not been able to come today or read the papers, again, find them online. And for the press and public watching, you'll be able to read the document and what our plans are about establishing a youth zone here in Peterborough, which is really great news. Pages 79 to 88. Linez, do you want to introduce this item?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to introduce this report. It takes us one step closer in the process for achieving a youth zone for Peterborough. And just a reminder, we agreed in September at this committee to make a bid to the Youth Investment Fund in partnership with Onside, a charity that successfully runs 14 youth zones around the country and which has an aspiration to deliver 10 more as part of the fund. I've personally visited the youth zone in Barking and Dagenham and have seen the positive difference it's making there, which could be replicated in Peterborough. If successful, Peterborough will see an £8.7 million investment in a state-of-the-art, purpose-built facility situated in a city centre location that offers open access, positive activities and support to young people at low to no cost to them. As part of the Youth Zone model, it is also forecast that £1.1 million per year will be generated through business philanthropy for the running of the Youth Zone in return for a £200,000 per year council contribution, making the Youth Zone a sustainable way of providing such needed support and activities for young people at a time when the impact of the cost of living means that their opportunities may be limited and the temptation to get involved in antisocial behaviour and criminal activity will be very appealing. This report sets out the updated position of the project and our approach to ensure the best opportunity to achieve the Youth Investment Fund funds, the work that we need to complete in the next few months to achieve a youth zone in the right place and within the project timescale. Thank you, Chair. I'm now happy to pass to presenting officers if there's anything they need to add, and then take questions.
Matt, do you want to contribute at this point, or do you want to move straight
Nothing
to
to add.
questions?
Thank you. That was a very comprehensive introduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, so an exciting project. I'm sure some of you got questions. I think Andy Coles might be first.
Leader, thank you. Yes, Matt, lovely to see the report here at Cabinet, and that you've made a lot of progress towards the Youth Investment Fund bid for the Youth Zone. I'm sure you'll remember in September you assured me that the majority of the funding is going to be external for the project, and you're not going to ask me to find money, because I know Cecilia's not going to be too happy if that's the case. So how confident are you that all the funding elements will come together to ensure that a youth zone in Peterborough is a success?
So I'm very confident at this point in time. We have already seen that the combined authorities funding around shared prosperity has had its investment plan accepted. That's we've put in the bid there a surplus amount of £300,000 from that fund. That's over and above our contribution, the contribution that we were asked to make. We also know that OnSide have been doing a lot of work here, that the extra £500,000 that they've raised in additional capital funding through their business philanthropy route for Peterborough, they're very invested in that. They're very committed to us, and that's really good to see. Of course, we are proceeding, and it's an iterative process. So we're proceeding on the basis of our plan, which has seen us put an investment, a youth investment fund bid forward. In the report, it states that we've done the initial part of that. It also states that we will be likely to go in February to March, but I've now been told that it'll be end of January that will go now to the panel. So they must feel that they're confident in being able to do that. And I think from the way that we've taken this forward, I think there's confidence in Peterborough. I think that there is motivation to get the funding into Peterborough. And I have every assurance that we'll be able to achieve that within the timescales.
Thank you. And Nicole has a question, I believe.
Thank you, Leader. I much welcome this project, and I think it will be life-changing for many young people in Peterborough. I'm interested in timescales. When do you think the Youth Investment Fund decision will be made? And why specifically have we identified 2 sites? I'm thinking particularly for our more rural wards to ensure that we capture as many young people in terms of accessibility and being able to use the youth investment zones.
Yes, thank you. That's an excellent question. The timescales have changed slightly. So as I said, an update to the report, we're going now end of January rather than February to the panel. It's likely that we'll then hear around about a month later. I anticipate coming back to this Cabinet in March to be able to update the results of the Youth Investment Fund. And the reason that we've taken the approach that we have is it really gives the best possible opportunity around sites, locations, the criteria that OnSide set out about best possible site, and not only accessibility for young people, but also the best place for Peterborough. And so that businesses feel confident in being able to invest in that model and that youth zone. It's quite important for sustainability and for the approach that we're taking. So I think that definitely taking the approach that we have done, it means that we give the best opportunity to get the youth zone in the right place and to be able to deliver it on time scale.
Matt, just push the microphone a little further away from you, because it's probably just getting overloaded because it's too loud. Cuts in and out. And give it a little jiggle. That's technical talk. So I've got one more question on this item from Councillor Ishu Hussain.
Hi Matt, the report talks about the financial risk of not meeting government spend deadlines for the Youth Investment Fund by March 2025. Can you tell us how you are mitigating that financial risk?
Yeah, I think as mentioned previously, the approach to taking 2 sites, we've committed to spending some money up front to absolutely move forward at pace with initial feasibility planning design work. We are making sure that we're contacting the government around the timescales for the Youth Investment Fund to give us every possible opportunity to be able to deliver that building within timescales. I think that from the information that I've had recently around that I'm feeling more confident than ever that can be achieved. I think that we're also working hard with Onside around their build timescales and around our planning for both sites to make sure that we can proceed at pace and shave off as much time as we possibly can around those bits that can be squeezed. There's no doubt that there is a risk there and it is tight. But as I said, I feel more confident as every week passes that the youth zone can be achieved within the timescales that we need it to achieve it in.
Thank you, Matt. I don't think I have any more questions on this item. Pretty sure I don't. So before I just move to the recommendations, I'd like to thank you, Matt, for all your work, because I know it's challenging. And also for the folks on side that are probably watching who you've also given a mention to. I can only, and I think they know, and we all know, that we're really keen to see this develop. I think it'd be an exciting thing to come to the city. I'd also like to thank Paul Bristow MP for his support with government and the ministerial teams. So I know he'll continue to pledge that support, and hopefully we can see this come to fruition in the quickest time possible. I'm confident, glass half full. So members, and I won't read them all, there are some caveats in recommendation 3 you will see, which we're happy to accept those about the site final decision and leases, and the approval of shared prosperity funding to transfer to on-side youth zones. And items 1 and 2, fairly straightforward. If we're happy to accept all those as published, we'll move on to the next item. Are we agreed? Thank you very much, members. Thank you, Matt. So equally as exciting, the adult social care IT system procurement for 2023, which will, very important stuff, which you'll find on pages 89 to 92. And John Howard, do you want to introduce this item, please?
Leader, it's a hard act to follow, but we will make it as exciting as we can for you, I'm sure. So this paper is for the procurement of the current adult social care solution, Mosaic, provided by Access UK. The contract expires this summer, summer 23, and to ensure stability and continuity of investment made to date, we're proposing a new contract of 5 years with a 2-year optional extension. Thank you.
Essential and necessary. We wouldn't function without it. Linez has a question.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Not a very long one either. Is the authority considering using one system for both adults and children's services, which of course I'm particularly engaged in?
Peter, I've got your name down. No, I haven't. Sorry, Peter, you're the next item. I have. Who do I have on this? There we go. We found you now. You're on screen behind me. I'm looking in the room for you, but I think you're both online. So, Chris, do you want to come in and pick that question up?
I don't think quite got them right.
We have a technical issue, that's why. So, I've got two of our contributors online here. Chris, can you hear us at all? Just nod if you can. Clearly not. And okay, what we might do, are we going to sort out the tech stuff if we come back to this item? Yeah?
Try.
We can move it. Does somebody want to let the people online know? And we'll move to the. In fact, it will be you, Peter, next. Then, I was looking at the paper in front of me, thinking I didn't realise Peter Gill had gone into social care. But in which case, then we will come back to item number 8 for the questions. If somebody can let them know, and Chris, if you can sort the IT out at the back there, that'd be marvellous. And we'll come back to that. Just give me a thumbs up when you're ready to go, and we can always go back to it. So in which case then, we'll go to item 9 for now, which is licensing schemes, raising housing standards, and Peter Gell is joining us at the table here, but to introduce the report is Marco Cereste.
Thank you. I mean, the report is really simple. It outlines an approach to improving housing standards and compliance in the private rented sector in the city. At this point, I'll hand over to our officer, and he will take questions or give you any further information if he feels it's appropriate.
What would you like to do, Peter?
Thank you. I think the report's quite detailed, so I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I have 2 questions noted already, and I have several questions noted already. The first one is from John Howard.
Thank you, Leader. Great report. My question is, if the Secretary of State were to refuse an application for selective licensing, does the Council have any alternative options we can consider?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think the first thing to say, it's unlikely that the Secretary of State would refuse, but should they do so, we still would have the mandatory licensing scheme for 5 or more people within a property. We also have the various enforcement powers and sanctions that we retain anyway. But there are alternatives, and I think our advice would be to pursue an additional licensing scheme, so the criteria is slightly less for that, and it would allow us as a council to make the decision on that, so it's not something we'd have to refer to the Secretary of State. We would have to go out to public consultation, which, as we would do with these things, was the right thing to do, but we would have control in that sense. So I'm confident that we do have good alternative options should that application be refused.
Great. Councillor Goulnouaz, please. Question 2.
Thank you, Leader. The report refers to working cohesively with other servers. What are we expecting?
I think it's important to say that the private sector housing enforcement function is just one of the many of responsibilities that the council has around housing, and it's really important that it works cohesively with those other functions, whether that be strategic housing, whether that be sort of various care and repair, housing adaptations. And also we know there's a real shortage in housing provision, so it's working to help create and generate more housing provision across the city, which we know there's a real need for. But I think there's much more on offer that we can do and should be doing. So they're well placed as far as a team to help prevent people going into crisis. The safeguarding aspects they will pick up during the work that they do. And there's much wider community aspects, whether it be antisocial behaviour, noise, enviro crime that officers will see when they're out and about. We would expect them to work with partners in order to identify and to help address those issues. We also work very closely with the police, and obviously there's opportunities there to help disrupt other criminal matters which help improve our communities. So they've got an important part to play across all that area, and that's something I would see this team doing.
Nigel, I skipped you in terms of where we were. Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Morning, Peter. Yeah, is it possible to have a citywide selective licensing scheme?
Yes, it's a good question. It's something which a number of members as I've thought about and asked before, certainly with the previous scheme. The answer to that is actually no, because it's based on some eligibility criteria. So only the area that's defined within the report meets the current requirements. But we do know that members have often asked, well, what about aspects in other areas? And we know through the report and the consultation that we undertook that there are other localities in the city, across the city where standards can be improved. They don't meet this set of eligibility criteria, but they would be suitable for an additional licensing scheme, which we believe. So the proposal is to go out to consult in relation to that. So I think there is an opportunity to have a good balance across the city as far as licensing schemes and various enforcement provisions that raise standards and I suppose we get a level playing field, which is what we're looking for. So those real, the majority of landlords which are reputable and do a good job, we want to support them and help them. And this will make sure that the investment they're putting into good properties is one that others have to replicate.
Thank you. Andy Coles, please.
Thank you, Leader. And Peter, thanks very much for the report. I'm interested in paragraph 10.1, the financial implications. You know only too well how difficult it's been. Can we do all of this? Can we deliver a housing standards approach within the financial means we have? Are we going to find that the third-party arrangement that we have is not going to be sufficient to cover all of our needs?
Yes, a lot of time has gone into looking at the financials and is very conscious of the challenging climate that local authorities face themselves in. So the scheme uses the licence fees, it uses the sanctions, the fees and enforcement sanctions as well in order to find a sort of balanced position going forward. I think we're also very proactive as a service in looking at grant funding when it's available, and we have done and continue to retain funding to supplement the work that we do, and there's ongoing discussions at the moment in that sense. So I'm confident that what we've got are arrangements that we can afford. Clearly there is an affordability envelope with going out to a third-party provider, and we need to make sure that they will come in under that, and we spec our request or ask, if you like, in order to make sure we can meet our the financials that we have going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And final question on this report, I think it's from Oliver.
Thank you. There are occasions where tenants can mistreat a property and tension can arise between them and the landlord may need to carry out costly work. What support, if any, is there for the landlord in this instance?
That's an extremely important point. You know, a lot of this report is really focused around raising standards and the poor landlords, but we mustn't forget there are some really good landlords out there that have experience and do experience problems with some of their tenants, and in some cases leaving property in a very poor condition, having left. So what we, excuse me. So what we're keen to do is to ensure that whether it's agents or landlords have all the information they need and support to enable to know what they can do in those circumstances. So whether it's looking at how to remove the waste that's been thrown outside onto the street when the previous person has left and not cleared, to tenants that are causing a lot of damage inside the property. So that's something that is really important. And again, it's something that came forward through the consultation feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Peter. Just an observation, a couple of comments from me before we move to the recommendations. So, of course, what we're looking to do is reintroduce this scheme, which lapsed, but we've taken some time to take stock here. Not only are we expanding the coverage area to include more areas, because there is a need for that, we're also looking to enhance the scheme from previous in the number of inspections will go up, the oversight and scrutiny of properties and landlords will be increased, which is great for people who are renting properties within Peterborough. So we are taking this seriously. Has taken a little bit of time to pull together, so I'd like to thank you and the team. It's a very comprehensive report that's before us today, and we look forward to working with our external partner or partners, whoever they may be, to take this scheme forward once the Secretary of State has given it the green light. So, members, I'd like to move you to the recommendations on page 93. Again, I won't read them out. They are as published in the papers, and you'll find them online on the Council's website if you're watching this back. So are we agreed to those two recommendations this morning, members? Thank you very much. Oh, we can maybe go back to item 9. Should we go for a take 2 on item 8, sorry, which is the social care paper. So I think, Chris, can you hear us now?
I can hear you.
Oh, good. Well, we can hear you as well, which is even better. So look, we'd introduced the item, and I think Councillor Ayres asked a question, which she might want to ask again
Yes, I'll do that.
so that you know what it is. Is that okay?
No problem. Yep, of course, absolutely.
Thank you, Leader.
You go on, and it's
Yeah.
Kristen as well. Sorry, Kristen. Hope you can hear us as well. So, Lynn, ask your question
Okay.
again, please.
My question is the authority considering using one system for both adults and children's services, which of course is the area that I'm responsible for?
You're both nodding, so one of you put your hand up. There you go, Kristen, you're going to answer, fine.
So good morning, everybody. So at this time, we're not reconsidering our systems, but in about 3 years' time, when the contracts for the systems are more aligned, it's definitely conversations we'd like to start to have.
Ooh, short and sweet, good. See, it was worth waiting for you. Okay, and we didn't get to Nigel's question, so I'm sure he'll ask it now.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Can you ensure us that we've got best value for money on this procurement, please?
Chris is going to answer that.
I'll take that if you like, Kirsten. We've managed to negotiate no RPI on this contract, so there's no annual increase, and the actual costs that we'll be paying are fairly comparable to now.
Lovely. Well, that was. I feel rather guilty that we've interrupted your morning just for those two questions. But if you could hear, maybe you couldn't hear my preamble into the item, which says basically how important this is and how we don't function with this. I know it sounds pretty, small beans to some people, but it's a very important cog in the wheel of our social care and children's services. So thank you very much for both joining the meeting today. And from Cabinet's point of view, we'll move to the recommendation to authorise the award of a contractor for an IT system supporting adult social care services to Access UK Limited for a period of 5 years, with an option to extend for a further 2 years to the 21st of July 23 for a contract sum of approximately £2.2 million. Are we agreed on that, folks? Thank you, folks. Thanks for joining us. I'm sure you can go off and, I don't know, do some more IT stuff or whatever. And save the planet. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Now, a very weighty and substantial report is before us today in terms of, well, it's not that big a report, but the subject is weighty. Gemma, if you'd like to, I was filling, Gemma, so you could position yourself accordingly and take a seat. So item 10 before us, and I won't steal any of Marco's thunder. He might want to say something, and I've got a few comments on my own.
Thank you, Leader. I was just signalling to Gemma that it's all right. She knows what she's called, but some people up here might not. But.
So introducing this item is Marco Celesti, and supporting is Gemma Wildman, who is responsible for the work on the last local plan, not solely, but part of the team. So, Marco, do you want to introduce this item?
Very, very quickly, Leader. We bring the report to the Cabinet to recommend that the Council authorises the commencement of the review of the Peterborough local plan, and, of course, to approve the timescale for the production of the local plan. It's also known as the Local Development Scheme, or LDS, if you want to read the letters. I hate them, but we do use them a lot. It is extremely important for the department, for our city, because it maps out the future requirements for development, for housing, and of course for employment. So I'm now going to hand over to our officer, who is very capable, and she will no doubt answer any questions the Cabinet may have. Thank you, Leader.
So, Gemma, do you want to supplement anything to start off with, or do you just want to move straight to questions? Entirely up to you.
Just a few points about the timetable, and it sets out that it's around about a 3-year process to get to the adoption of the local plan, and that involves statutory consultation stages. So there's 3 rounds of public consultation and also a public examination. We have to submit the document to central government, who appoint an independent planning inspector who looks at any outstanding objections or issues before making recommendations for the council to then adopt the plan. So yes, as I said, it's a 3-year process.
Great. Okay, well, I have a number of questions that have already been put to me that members can ask. So, Lynn Ayres is the first one.
Thank you, Leader. My first question is, why do we need to prepare a new local plan? I mean, bearing in mind that the current plan is until 2036.
Yes, the local plan was adopted in July 2019, and local plans normally set at least a 15-year period, so we can look at the strategic growth strategy and the infrastructure that required to meet that growth target. But national policy is quite clear that we have to review that about every 5 years. So we're sort of at that point now where we need to think, is it time to start the review? As I mentioned, it does take 3 years to prepare a new plan. And we sort of have to look at the evidence and information to see if we think the strategy is being delivered. And there are a few things that have changed with national policy that we want to update the plan to include, such as climate change, biodiversity, net gain, and also to look at whether we've got the right housing sites, employment sites, and whether we're meeting our growth strategy. And I think particularly employment is quite an important issue that we want to go and look at and make sure we've got the right land in the right location to attract investment and new jobs into the city. So that's why we're looking to prepare a new local plan.
Councillor Hussain, please.
Thank you, Chair. Will the new local plan include policies for affordable housing?
Yes, so that's a requirement by national policy, and there is a need for affordable housing across the city. So we will look at what the need is and then balance that against what the viability is. So for the plan, we have to test that we're not, by the policies we include, we're not stopping development from coming forward. So we'll have to test that and then look at what that could be. So the current local plan, it's 30% on sites of 15 or more dwellings. So we'll look at that as a starting point and then see what the evidence says of what we want to include in the new plan.
And Nigel Simons, please. That's the third question.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Morning, Gemma. Yeah, we seem to get residents really are really concerned about infrastructure. Sorry, and we get a lot of criticism about infrastructure. Will the growth be supported by the infrastructure, please?
Yes, that's an important part of the plan, that we will have to make sure that what the growth target is, that we're looking to ensure that there is the right infrastructure in place to support that. And we have to do an infrastructure delivery plan. So we'll work with other council departments, such as the transport and education, as well as other stakeholders that we have to work with to do with water and drainage and all other issues like that. So it's a big part of the plan, and make sure that things are going to be in place to meet the growth.
And finally on this for now, John Howard.
Thank you, Leader. My question is, how will the current neighbourhood plans fit into this review? Will they need to be reviewed themselves?
That's a good question, yes. The neighbourhood plans that are currently adopted and approved by the council will still hold the same weight. So there's no need for those to be reviewed. But it's up to the parish councils, I suppose, or the groups that prepared those plans. And I'm aware of some that are thinking about a review to sort of fit with knowing that we're preparing a new local plan. But it's up to the parish council, and more might want to come forward and prepare plans to fit with the new local plan as well.
Okay, I didn't see any more people wishing to speak on this item right now. So, as I said at the outset, it's a very important piece of work coming up, and our current local plan was developed with Gemma and team, and also I'd like to thank the former Cabinet member Peter Hiller for his work to get us where we are today. So he knows, as well as do many members around the table, what's involved. But one of the things that made me ask that we kickstart this process again is the success, particularly of business within Peterborough. That demand has outstripped supply, that our success as a city in terms of growth is evident because the majority of the land that we put in the local plan for employment use has already been used. So it's timely, particularly on that aspect, that we look. Councillor Hussain makes a good point about affordable housing, and we've always had affordable housing, but again, the demand is outstripping supply. So we need to bring on more sites that are suitable for development, and that would be part of the call for sites in any review of the local plan. So what I'd say to business is we are making good on our promise to keep supporting business, and indeed for those people looking for a house, we are there to support and build as many as we can, as quickly as we can, with our partners both in the private sector and indeed the local housing associations. So this is a good bit of news, but there's a long road ahead, and that's where we are today, which is why we've got the recommendations that authorise officers to commence a review of the local plan and approves the attached local development scheme, LDS, which sets out the timetable for the production of a new local plan and brings it into effect from the 26th of January 2023. Is that agreed, folks?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we now move on to item 11. Thank you, Gemma. And Karen, I'll give you a moment to take your seat and get your sandwiches out and do whatever, get your coffee going. There's been much written about our success, and again, I'd like to thank Paul Bristow for his support, and also the combined authority in terms of making the business cases for the Towns Fund projects, which have changed somewhat over time because of pandemics, because of the economic situation we find ourselves in today as a country, but not only as a country, as the world. So the Vine project itself is one of 8 projects within the Towns Fund programme. It is the final project to apply for full funding from government, of course. It includes the redevelopment of the former TK Maxx building in Bridge Street, and those that have been here long enough will know it as Woolworths.
Yeah.
What was it before that? Well, I know Lynn or Steve would know. The Vine will provide, in fact, you can still see the signs. The Vine will provide a dynamic, flexible space right in the heart of our centre, city centre, for people to socialise, enjoy locally produced food and drinks, set up and run small businesses, learn in high-quality teaching spaces, and come along to a wide range of exhibitions and events, providing a place to work and visit and draw footfall to the area and help support the local economy. The request, therefore, today is to approve the submission of the documents to government to apply for funding for this project in line with the Towns Fund programme, and if successful, it will secure £13 million from government for this project to deliver positive outcomes for the city centre and for the people of Peterborough. So, Karen, do you have anything to add to that before we throw the floor open to questions?
Yeah, that's very detailed, thank you.
Oh, you'll have to use your mic, though.
Is that better?
No, middle button. Not the yellow one.
Thank
the
you very
one,
much.
There, that one. Otherwise, nobody will hear what you're saying.
No, it's great, thank you.
Okay, so in which case then, Andy Coles has the first question.
Thank you, Leader. Karen, it's so exciting to see that this has finally got to this stage where we're actually applying for extra money. I suppose we've been waiting a while for this to happen, and so if we are successful getting all the money in, what's the sort of timeline you think for delivering the Vine for Peterborough?
Thank you. If we have the approval today and we can go forward with the application, we'd be looking at worst to receive the funding from government by June this year. So this summer we'd be looking to do RIBA 2 design activities, a public consultation, putting in the planning submission for the build. Fast forward to next winter, we'd be looking at planning determination and finalising the operator procurement. We'd be looking to start the build contract summer 24 and starting the construction. So I'd be looking to actually open the building early 26.
Thanks. John Howard, please.
Thank you, Leader. It sounds such a unique proposition, and I think it will intended to offer obviously a lot of space with lots of opportunities in the city. But what I wonder is, because it sounds such a unique proposition, is there anywhere, any other town or city that has developed something similar to this that we can look at as an example?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, so there are some other examples across the country and other towns which do offer this sort of multi-use building which has been developed. So it is a proven concept, and there are lots of other vines in other towns. So, for example, in Mansfield, there was a Beals department store which has been developed. In Tamworth, there was an old co-op building.
In Sheffield, there's a building called Castle House, which again used to be a co-op building. There's a number of examples in London, including Hackney and in Peckham. And as part of a project team, we've actually done a site visit to the site in Peckham to have a look at that development, see how it operates, and gain some knowledge from that, which we can feed into what the options could be for Peterborough.
Great, thank you. I think Marco has a question.
Thank you, Leader. The Vine will be accessible to many different people for lots of different reasons. How do you intend to keep people updated on the progress and allow them to input into the future project development?
Thank you. So for all of the programme and each of the projects, we do have a Townsend website, which is part of the PCC website, and specific pages. There's specific pages for each of the projects. We also have an e-newsletter which is published quarterly, and the board meetings and agenda and the minutes, which are published online, and we do have a number of press releases. So for the Vine project to date, we've effectively had bespoke engagement activities to understand the operator and occupier requirements to get us to this stage, and we've done wider engagement with the property market as part of a feasibility study which we carried out last summer to see what sort of tenants would like to be using that space. So going forward, which was your question, we would have a number of other consultations. We've got a communication stakeholder plan to make sure we link into local communities and businesses to help us develop the next stage of the project. That does include market testing, which will be looking at alignment for what the future tenants' needs would be for that building, looking at the long-term viability of the scheme, and making sure we maximise potential social values. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, we'd have a formal consultation which would be due to take place this summer.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, and finally Nicole, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you very much for the report. I note there is a funding gap for the Vine project at this time, and there are two other Vine project designs offered, a phased delivery and a dual site approach. What assurance can you give that these alternatives will give people the same deliverables in the city, for example, a place to work, study, eat and socialise? Thank you.
Thank you. So a large part of the criteria for Peterborough applying for the funds from DLUHC and from government is the ability to deliver and to measure those changes for each of the Townsend projects. And the Vine does have some very clear objectives for the city. So that's creating those opportunities for informal and formal learning, becoming a centre of community-based cultural enterprise and activity, driving footfall to the area and offering a new library service. So both of the contingency options in the paper fulfil those needs for government and of course for the people of Peterborough, and both of those options, the phased delivery and the dual site approach are in budget. The phased delivery approach will effectively look at a full development of the ground floor of the former TK Maxx building on Bridge Street, and that would offer food and beverage and educational space. And the rest of the building will have a structural development to prepare it for future uses as funding becomes available. So as more funding becomes available, we'll develop each of the floors. So the project will be delivered, but just on a slightly smaller scale compared to the whole of the TK Maxx building. For the dual site approach, what we would do is look at developing the ground floor of the former TK Maxx building on Bridge Street to offer event space, food and beverage, retail outlets, but it will have minimal structural work to the rest of the building. We'll then use the central library site. We'll transform that to a modern library on the ground floor with a commercial space, co-working, maker spaces, an educational suite on the upper floor. So both of those contingency plans will have a positive impact and will offer the same deliverables. We've just tried to be very responsible to make sure we've got other options if need be.
Thank you. So no more questions from members. I'll just a couple of summary items because firstly, we must give thanks to yourself and the team, because what's happened over the last probably 36 months is that we've had to adapt and change because of the cost in materials, the cost in providing the transformation of these buildings has gone up exponentially, which is why we have to keep constantly revising our budgets and going back to government to say we can do this or we can do that. So the reason why I say this is because it could well change again. So we're trying to do what we can do in terms of regenerate buildings, particularly city centre, and bring them back to use or give them new uses. And we would all agree that the Woolworths TK Maxx building is not the most attractive building in the world. So anything has got to be better than what we currently have in terms of the wall, to quote a Pink Floyd song. So hopefully we can improve that outlook, as well as the continued investment in Lower Bridge Street that we're doing. So I think it's all good, it's all positive, and again shows that Peterborough and its officer team are delivering on investment for the city, and we will continue to do that despite the challenges that we're presented to with our own finances in terms of revenue. Growth continues here in the city, and this is just yet another example. So, folks, there is one recommendation, again, which is approves the Townsdale summary document as set out in Appendix 1 of this report, and its submission to the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities for approval in line with our agreed Towns Fund programme. Are we all agreed with that? Thank you very much, Karen. Always a pleasure as ever. And we will move swiftly on. I've just looked at the introduction to the next item. Prepare yourself and hunker down for 20 minutes or so. It is...
I'm going to go for it, Leader.
Well, no, I'm sure you can. I can sure you can edit this as we go along. So, item 12 is the ARU Anglia Ruskin University Peterborough Phase 3 full business case. Councillor Innes, supported by Adrian Chapman, I would imagine, is going to take this item forwards for us. Lynn.
Which I'm delighted to do, because yet again, here's something else for the young people and residents of Peterborough to get excited about. So I do want to tell you a fair amount about it. This represents a further £26 million of investment in Peterborough. And so soon after completing Phase 1, which opened in full on time and within budget in September, it's hugely positive to be presenting this business case for Phase 3. Just to remind the Cabinet of the background, Phase 1 represents the first teaching block, which has already accepted its first intake of students and is about to welcome its second intake, including a significant number of foreign students. Phase 2 represents the new Research and Innovation Building, which is about to be handed over, again having been delivered within budget. And Phase 3, which is the subject of today's report, and the subject of this full business case, which is very interesting if anybody would read the entire report, it's extremely interesting, represents the second teaching building, this one incorporating a living lab. And the living lab will be, again, an exciting space where science, technology, engineering and mathematics will be brought to life and showcased. And it will also be open to the community to access and benefit from. So it's a building really for everybody, not just the students, but for the residents of Peterborough as well. Bearing in mind, of course, we do have a very open site at the university where people can go onto the site. It's not got walls or fences around it. People go onto the site of the university at present, and they will continue to do so, hopefully, when we get this Phase 3 up. And we set out the vision for the next milestone alongside the financial case in this report, the benefit-cost ratio, all of which is actually quite interesting, particularly since it's calculated as good. And this remains the case even if just 50% of the estimated student numbers enrol. Planning permission was secured in December for this, and the council is contributing both the £20 million of the Levelling Up Fund, and subject to approval in a separate item today, the land on which this phase will be built. And so we shall see phase 3 opening for business, I dearly hope, in the autumn of 2024. That's less than 2 years from now, with works commencing any day. It is exciting. We've managed to deliver on time, within budget before, and I am pretty confident that we're going to do the same thing again here. So yes, over to questions, and I'm sure Adrian Chapman is very prepared to answer most of them.
So, Adrian Chapman, do you want to say anything now, or?
No, nothing to add, Leader. It was very comprehensive, thank you.
Okay, so I've got about 5 questions listed in terms of advance notice on this. So Marco is the first one, I believe.
Yes, Leader, thank you. Can you say something about the impacts the university is having on, or is planned to have, especially on Peterborough and its residents?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Councillor Sereste. So, we know the narrative in Peterborough for a while has been that we're a relatively low-skill, low-wage city, and educational progression into further and higher education is fairly limited. And we've also some quality of life challenges with more than our fair share of deprived communities. And one of the things that a university like ours, in fact our university, will deliver for the city is significant improvements to access for people to access better quality jobs, improve their earnings, equals better quality employment, and we start to reverse, and in fact the business case itself quotes this, reverse decades of relative economic decline and increasing, therefore, opportunities, aspiration, wages and social mobility. There's also something I think about Peterborough playing its part here in terms of the levelling up agenda, increasing regional innovation, accelerating the UK's net zero transformation agenda. These are all things that I think are going to put Peterborough on the map. 47% of students in the first intake in September were from a PE postcode, which is, I think, a great achievement and certainly something that we're working hard with the university on in terms of maintaining. So, investing in local people within Peterborough itself and its environs to improve their employment opportunities and thereby improving their quality of life indications, I think is entirely where the university should be focused.
Thank you. Andy Coles, please.
Thank you, Leader. Thanks, Adrian. I'm just looking at the previous chat we had about the Vine, about the worry of the increasing costs in materials and labour and so forth. I'm just wondering whether the £26 million in the report is going to be sufficient or whether there's a contingency just in case.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there is definitely a challenge in phase 3. As Councillor Ayres mentioned, phase 1 and in fact phase 2 also have been delivered within budget. And in fact, in the case of phase 1, there is a small contingency left which will transfer into phase 3. It's all held by the same development company. But there is no doubt that the phase 3 estimates are coming in higher than originally forecast. So there is a live piece of work now underway with the excellent project management company Mace and the contractors to try to identify areas where costs can be reduced without affecting, this is an important principle, without affecting the overall feel of the building. It's really important that the building sits comfortably in the campus that we're trying to develop here. And so we don't cut corners in terms of quality, the green agenda and so on. And also that the building, even if we do have to reduce costs, still delivers in full the aspirations set out in the business case. We're really confident we can do that. There are some alternative build mechanisms that are being looked at the moment that should reduce some of those costs. And there is a contingency, just to pick up on that point, built into the phase 3 budget, which is there if we need to use it, some several £100,000. So I remain confident, although it is definitely more challenging.
Nigel?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. This business case is for phase 3. Will there be further phases, please?
Yes, absolutely. It's our intention to continue building out a campus within that vicinity for some considerable time. The original outline planning application included 5 phases. Phases 1 to 3 or phases 1 and 2 have certainly been delivered. Phase 3 we're talking about today. Phase 4 we need to start working on immediately, in our view, and that will be some kind of inward investing research institute, which will include a major research and development programme in an industry sector to be identified. And in fact, we'll be bringing further information on that forward to Cabinet in the coming days and weeks. Phase 5 will be a third teaching building, so that will be a more traditional teaching space similar to the building that's currently open, and will importantly include a sports science facility. This is the original plan. I don't expect that to change. So 5 phases in the original outline planning application. Probably likely, I think, that we'll want to go beyond that, and we've talked before about 7 phases. So given the success so far of phase 1 and the imminent handover of phase 2, if we can build out phase 3, we've really got some momentum building here. So I see fairly ambitious plans here to continue to develop into 7 phases.
Okay, a couple more questions. Oliver and then Nicole, please.
Thank you. Although this is a university for Peterborough, it is designed to benefit the region. With that in mind, how are we making sure that Peterborough's interests are prioritised and protected?
Thanks, Councillor Sainsbury. Yeah, this is, I think, for me, all about our relationship with the university and the leadership we as a council are applying. There are some very formal governance arrangements in place, of which the council has a significant role. First of all, the development company that's building phases 1 and 3, has built phase 1 and is building phase 3. We have 2 board member places on that company, and we are a shareholder in it. And there is a wider ARU Peterborough governing body. Again, we have a formal board member place around that table. Ross Renton, Professor Ross Renton, the excellent principal of ARU Peterborough, has also made himself very well known in Peterborough. He's very well connected with partners. He's now a board member on City College Peterborough's governing board. And we, with Councillor Ayres' support, will be establishing a new skills partnership for the city to focus on skills for the city, not the wider region necessarily. And the university, Ross in particular, will be a member of that skills partnership board, along with many other key stakeholders. So I think we've got a fair amount of stake in this agenda to make sure we keep this local.
Okay, and finally, Nicole Moyo, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Adrian, for the report. This business case largely deals with the physical development of the new building. Where and how do matters associated with the curriculum get debated and agreed? And how are we able to make sure that students learn skills that respond to the needs of employers? And I particularly ask this question to ensure that we respond to the needs and aspirations of potential students who would like to study at the university. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I mentioned just a moment ago the emerging AIU Peterborough board. It's a new board that's governing the quality and curriculum of the delivery of the university, as opposed to the development of the building itself. We have a place on that board. I currently occupy that place. Needs of our city, and those needs, I agree with you, fall into 2 halves. First, the needs of employers, and I go back to my comment around the university's role in engaging with employers. They're very extensively working with employers to understand the needs of the city. We're using data to help shape curriculum and to fill gaps. An example of that might be, for example, our own carbon neutral aspirations. We're going to require new skills, people with new skills to come into that sector, to that industry, to help deliver those kinds of changes going forwards. And the skills partnership I've mentioned will include employers around the table, so we can connect the dots up there. For local people, it's about making sure that the entry routes, I think, into the university are as straightforward and as simple as possible, and include things like appropriate housing and transport links. All of those things are really important features that are exercising the ARU Peterborough board. But that's the place really where all of these things get debated. And as I say, we have a place on that board, and it's really gathering in momentum.
Thank you very much. That's questions done on that item that I have noted before me. So the recommendations, as laid out on page 189, are before us today. 1, 2 and 3, are we agreed to all of those? Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, we'll move to item 13, conscious of time. I know one or two of you got to go fairly quick, but hopefully we will get through these last 2 or 3 items quite quickly now. There is an exempt annex to the following 3 items, of which I don't intend to move into private session, but we will need to do, if any of you want to bring up any part of the exempt paper, which I hope we don't have to today, because we've been through this document. However, the next item has attracted some public interest already from a number of quarters, and I will be making some comments and statements at the end of the presentation of this report, which is before us today. So Felicity is with us to help and introduce this. I think will be Andy Coles.
Leader, yes, thank you very much. To facilitate the previous agenda item we've just discussed and agreed, we need to transfer land to be able to facilitate this. Now, due to the proximity of the initial 2 phases, the regional pool car park site has been identified as the preferred location for this phase 3 of the university project. As you've heard, it's a second teaching building, and what I find particularly interesting is the Living Lab, which is a public science centre, which is a bit like a STEM version of the Vine, if you like, which is going to be more for culture. And we'll also get 1,750 more students to this amazing new university for Peterborough as well. Planning permission has been granted, and we're expecting development to go ahead now that it's been agreed, and will then go to full council for final approval. So it's another positive step in developing our university, but as I'm aware that there are some concerns that have come up, and I know you want to address those, so maybe I'll keep quiet now and allow questions, but you may wish to just address those issues now, Leader.
I'll perhaps do so in my summary of remarks at the end, but do you have anything to add at this point, Felicity?
Nothing else, no, thank you.
No, okay. In which case, then I'll move straight to questions. John Howard has the first question.
Thank you, Leader. It's noted that there is a temporary car park proposed on the redundant football pitches within the embankment, but I notice a planning application is yet to be submitted. What are the interim measures to reduce the impact of the loss of the car park for the regional pool, which I know is causing a bit of concern?
Thank you, Councillor. It is unfortunate that we haven't got an immediate solution to this car parking issue, and that it will not be available to users of the regional pool. However, there continues to be sufficient capacity at Bishops Road car park, and in particular, especially in the evening, which is only a 5-minute walk from the regional pool. In addition to this, it is proposed that the user of the facility will be able to utilise some coach parking spaces within an access way around the pool, and further ongoing work is looking at immediate spaces within the curtilage of the facility. Thank you.
Oliver, please.
Thank you. I think it kind of links into your previous answer, but if planning permission is rejected for the temporary car park, is there an alternative solution being considered?
Sorry. Thank you, Councillor. There was actually a planning application that was granted for an area of land to the east of the regional pool. However, it was felt that that area perhaps was not the best location, which is why the alternative site at the redundant football pitches is being explored. So in the event planning permission is not granted on those pitches, this will have to be reviewed again.
And Gulnuaz, please.
Sorry, Leader, I think the same question was asked by John anyway.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's all right. I don't have any more questions listed on this. And as I say, I don't think we need to go into the exempt appendix, which is just about the commercially sensitive aspects of land values and sale and stuff. This has been well documented. There's been some public outcry, concern, whatever you want to call it, since these papers were first published, which is regrettable because there was no need for that outcry to have happened in the first place. And I'll be taking up with officers as to why we got to a situation that caused that outcry and alarm. But let me reassure members of the public and users that we will be doing all we can immediately to make sure there is no inconvenience from a parking perspective for regional pool users and indeed athletics club users. So I've been written to over the weekend by Simon Martin, who's the chair of the Peterborough Swimming Club, who has copied that same letter to all councillors. And in that letter, he makes some assumptions. So I just want to put on record here that the assumptions are wrong. We will be releasing further details, as we said last week, about where additional parking will be located for users of the regional pool. However, what I would say, I don't want to invest heavily in new parking on a permanent basis, or indeed on the pool, because it is still this council's intention to replace the regional pool and leisure centre. Again, I'll have to remind people, and I think it was back in 2018-19, there was a report done about the pool and our future facilities, with Pleasure Fair Meadow being cited as a possible location. But unfortunately, we live in a different financial and economic world than we did, and it was never going to happen at £37 million, which is what the cost of that proposed pool was. However, we have been working on scaled back versions of a new facility. Unfortunately, we had something called COVID-19 get in the way of our plans, and all the council staff and resources were focused on dealing with that pandemic. On the back of that, we come into an economic crisis and a global cost of living crisis. And again, things have escalated in terms of what things might cost to replace and rebuild. However, what I'm saying is, and be clear, so for the Simon Martin, who is a constituent of mine in Westward, it is the council's clear intention to improve and replace those ageing facilities because they are costing us money. And for the athletics club, again, we are aware of the athletic club and we know that it might affect them as well. So again, we're hoping as soon as we can to announce firm plans as to what we're doing in the locale. But I also have to say, as Felicity pointed out, there is Bishop's Road car park, which is a 2-minute walk from the car park we've disposed of to the university. So it's not the end of the world, and we'll be just firming up some future plans on site to make it clearer by adjusting access to those roads and or signage, which currently, for example, there's no entry sign, which is not really helpful if you want to go in that way. So, but council moves slowly, as many people here around this table will know. So we are aware of it, we're on it. We will make sure that we will do the best we can, but also please bear in mind we're looking to replace that facility, so don't want to be spending an absolute fortune on it. And one of the things that I've been trying to progress since I became leader is the provision of a new pool, and perhaps this has just brought it into a sharper focus, and the officers know, particularly Mr. Chapman, that I've said let's get on with it, but it's something that we can't afford, and we'll have to work in probably partnership with the private sector, as we did with Vivacity Hampton Fitness, which is a great facility. So let's try and replicate that kind of arrangement in the city centre. So I hope all that makes sense, but that's mainly for public consumption and press so that they can no doubt put the facts right. So we are committing to investing in leisure. We haven't forgotten about leisure. It's very important to the people of Peterborough, and we're the administration that will deliver and improve our leisure services. Hope all that is clear. Okay, folks, so I'm happy to move to the recommendations on page 293 as set out before us, 1, 2 and 3. Are we all agreed to those? Agreed. Thank you very much, everybody. Again, members, we'll move to the next item, which again has a exempt annex, but something that's already been well publicised and our intention is known. It's the confirmation of the arrangements to transfer services provided by NPS Peterborough. following the termination of their agreement to our property and estates. You'll find that report on pages 305 to 312 this morning. And again, if you wish to discuss anything exempt, which you'll find in the paper, we would need to close the meeting and go into exempt session. So please indicate if you do, or if anybody thinks you are. And again, it's only the commercial sensitivities around the financing and figures. So I think this is Andy again.
Leader, yes, thank you. And Vijay Chandramani is here to answer any questions later on. But what I would say in relation to this particular recommendation of the report is that on the 20th of June 2022, the Cabinet agreed to terminate its agreement with MPS Peterborough Limited in relation to property and estate management services, and we gave 12 months' notice of termination in accordance with the terms of the agreement. The primary reason for termination was so that the Council has better corporate oversight and control of its property portfolio and asset management planning, including its disposal strategy. Following issuing the termination notice and a further review, and running the operation with an interim lead that many here will know, it has become clear that the Council would benefit from bringing forward the termination date and the transfer of these services from MPS Peterborough Limited to give the Council control of the activity as soon as possible, greater certainty to the staff within MPS Peterborough Limited, and the potential to achieve savings on this service provision going forward. It's now proposed that the services will be transferred back to the Council on the 1st of February 2023, with the last date of the contract being the 31st of January, or as soon as is reasonably possible. I'll leave it there, Leader, and turn to Vijay if there are any questions that need answering, or if Vijay has anything to add.
Okay. Vijay, do you have anything to add at this point? Bottom button in the middle. It's got a little mouth sign on it.
Thank you.
It's helpful, that, by the way.
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
That's okay. Right. So I have Nigel Simons and Ishfaq Hussain who have questions on this item.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. How will you manage the transfer with such a short notice?
Thank you. There is a transition project team already in place, comprising legal, HR, IT, and finance experts who are engaging with the NPS opposite numbers on a practically hourly basis. So the project is on in full swing. Staff consultations have already been diarized by NPS for January. Out of 4, 2 have already taken place. And so far, the feedback and the questions coming back are not insurmountable and nothing to really worry about.
Thank you very much. Ishi.
Who will run the service after it is transferred?
It is proposed that the service will be run in-house by the council, and there is an individual, Simon Jones, already in place as Director of Property and Commercial Services.
Great. For those eagle-eyed amongst you or members of the public, you will note that we appointed a property director just a couple of months, but it seems ages ago. And in fact, I think that was him in the room moments ago. Like Will-o'-the-wisp, he's gone. But he's definitely in place and in situ, so our arrangements are well underway. So there are quite lengthy recommendations, and again, I don't expect to read them all out, but they are on pages 305, and they're 1 to 5, and A, B, and C on 5. Are we agreed on all of those? Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So hopefully, I was hoping by about 11:30, we are more or less there. We'll move on to the last item this morning, which is the irrecoverable debts in excess of 10,000. A fairly standard bit of business, although it sounds strange when you say it like that, but inevitably we do find ourselves in these situations from time to time. So Andy, do you want to introduce this item? And again, members, there is an exempt section to this report, which, unless we feel a need to go into it, I won't close the meeting right now. Andy.
Thank you, Leader. The Council is committed to taking all necessary action before we consider a debt for write-off. Despite our best endeavours, it's inevitable that a small percentage of debt will remain uncollected and will ultimately have to be written off. There are a number of reasons why this happens, with the most common being when a company's gone into liquidation, an individual has been made bankrupt, a debtor has died with no funds available within the estate, or where it's not been possible to trace a debtor. Writing off irrecoverable debt is a necessary management tool, which is standard practice, and it's recommended as part of good financial management. If there are any questions, then Cecilia's here to answer them, or you can ask me, indeed.
Okay, Cecilia, unless you want to jump in at this point, you do or you don't?
No, very
No,
comprehensive.
okay. A couple of questions I have on notice. One is from Nicole, and one is from Linnea. So, Nicole, do you want to do yours first?
Yes, thank you, Leader. The council's facing a very challenging financial position, and I believe shouldn't we be doing more to recover the debt instead of writing it off? And I think I'll be interested to find out any sort of alternatives. I note in the report you have a list of all the suggestions that you had in terms of doing your best to try to recover the debt off, but I'll be interested if there is more that we can be doing to ensure that we minimise the write-off. Thank you.
Yeah, that's for you.
Just checking. Yes, we get to the point we only write off bad debt when there is no prospect whatsoever of recovering, where these are mainly business rates, where the businesses have gone into administration or gone bankrupt. So there is no way of collecting the bad debt. It's not that we just give up after a while. We use tracing agencies, we use bailiffs whenever needed. We're very, very keen, and our collection rates reflect that. There is just a small residual amount where those businesses are no longer operating, and we have no legal recourse to collect.
And finally, Linnea, please.
Thank you, Leader. And the report mentions that the council has a provision for bad and doubtful debts. How does this work, and how is it reviewed?
So we set aside a small percentage of uncollectible debt for every debtor we raise. We know that we're not going to be able to collect 100%. So, for instance, for business rates and an NDR, we know that it is always going to be a very small proportion of people who won't pay. So, against the collection fund, so just to make it clear, this is not a budgetary provision. Against the collection fund, we set aside a very small percentage that go into the accounts, and as and when we have to write off bad debt, we write it off against that provision in the accounts. So just making it absolutely clear, not writing off the debt would not give us a budget saving or anything. This is an accounting issue only.
Cecilia, it might also be worth pointing out this is accumulation of debt. It's not in a year. And the reason being, again, a second or third time I've referred to it, is that our focus has been on COVID-19, particularly in terms of the work we've been doing. It's not to say that we ignore debt, as just been spoken about. We do chase debt, but you can't chase debt from people who have died or gone into liquidation, or for whatever reason. We do take it seriously. So that's the first thing that you might want to just confirm for the press and public. This is probably over 3 years or something, and it does talk about what our average in-year debt is. The other thing that might be important to know is how we fare, and if you don't know now, we can certainly let people know, against other authorities in terms of percentage. I always thought we were quite good at debt collecting or getting the money in that is owed to us, compared with, we're certainly not poor at doing that job. And I think that offers reassurance to people that, one, we're doing all we can do. Two, this is not unusual, and we should do it annually, but we haven't for the reasons outlined. And now basically we're tidying up, and this is housekeeping to bring us back to zero as such if we do all this at once. Does what I've just said all make sense? But don't take my word for it.
Yes, it does, absolutely, Leader. This is old debt, and we continue collecting when we can for years. We have very good in-year collection rates, which is a national key performance indicator, both for council tax and NDR. And we keep a very close eye on the collection rates as well. So now we come into the end of the financial year and we have a big drive to make sure the last 2 months of the financial year we are pursuing very, very proactively the last few outstanding payments. Our collection rates are holding up in year for a number of other local authorities who have taken a more relaxed view and letting people off paying. That's not the case in Peterborough. It's very clear that our local residents know that the council is a preferential creditor and they pay the council tax, and I'm very keen that we keep that kind of understanding in place, because we need to collect every penny that's outstanding to pay for our services. So this is just a housekeeping exercise when we get to the point where the debt is uncollectible.
Fine. Okay. Thank you very much. There was one recommendation, which is to authorise the write-off of the debt shown as outstanding in respects of NNDR, which is non-domestic business rates, council tax accounts receivable, sundry debt, accounts and housing benefit overpayments included in the appendices to the report, which detail the financial year and category for the write-off request. Is that all agreed? Lovely. And that, folks, brings us to the end of today's Cabinet meeting, so I may thank all contributors, both online, officers, members of the Cabinet, members of the public, members here in the room, and thank you all for your time, and until the next time, it's goodbye.